Tonight is a very special evening for us in Glencree because we've wanted for so long to honour a woman who has made such a unique and important contribution to her community, her profession, and ultimately to this island. That woman is Professor Monica McWilliams. Before getting into my remarks, I want to give apologies on behalf of the former Taoiseach Bertie Ahern, who was travelling this week and cannot be here, but offered his best wishes to Monica and the event, saying that her role and contribution to the talks process almost 25 years ago left a lasting and indelible impression on him and all who participated. Former Taoiseach Minister Mary Harney, who was the deputy leader of that government, also offered her regrets that she was unable to be here this evening, but wanted us to let Monica know how much her contribution to the talks process was appreciated and greatly valued by those who worked in government at that time. It is impossible in the course of an evening to adequately sum up the entirety of Monica's contribution to the peace process. From her early years, she was aware that Northern Ireland was a place apart and that very real tensions permeated the atmosphere between two uneasy communities. The late 1960s saw an explosion of those tensions onto the streets and ultimately led to 25 years of ferocious intercommunal violence, the effects of which are felt to this very day. Tonight is an opportunity to explore with Monica her motivations for getting into the often dangerous space of Northern Ireland politics and to look at how events on the ground during those dark days led her to conclude that her voice and the voices of others could play the kind of role she eventually did play in the Good Friday negotiations. We in Glencree have very good memories of members of the Women's Coalition participating in our political dialogue workshops that took place at our centre in Wicklow between 1994 and 2007. The Women's Coalition were regular attendees, bringing a unique and otherwise unheard perspectives into our discussions in the period when the ceasefire broke down in 1996 and then in the run-up to the agreement of 1998. Any fair assessment of Monica's contribution to the politics and public life of Northern Ireland would have to be anchored in her sense of duty and public service. A role model for women everywhere, wishing to get into the arena and to make a contribution to social change, addressing economic injustice, human rights, and yet Monica is larger than this because she exemplifies the very essence of what it is to be an active citizen, offering public service to her community regardless of gender. What is so astonishing to all of us on this part of the island is that when you read Monica's memoir, she met all of the challenges in communities, whether they be in the fields of housing availability, women suffering from domestic violence or educational underattainment, against the grim and daily reality of ongoing violence against many of the people she was working with. In a normal, some might say benign political environment, many organisations find these challenges and the bureaucracy around them daunting, yet she worked through all of this in a war zone, often with the cost of great personal sacrifice. One cannot talk about Monica without referencing the quality of courage to, as she says, stand up and speak out. The American poet laureate Robert Frost wrote, "Courage is the human virtue that counts most. Courage to act on limited knowledge and insufficient evidence. That's all any of us have." When we consider the dark days of the Troubles with no sense of how it would end and no certainty that people would want it to end, Monica jumped into the arena, demanding nothing more than an equitable solution to the issue of broken relationships in Northern Ireland and between the two islands of Ireland and Britain. Along with the other women who got elected to the Northern Ireland Forum in 1996, Monica and her colleagues were met with everything from insult to derision, the price, some would say, of putting one's head above the parapet. Yet here, she and the other members of the Women's Coalition were with the first real chance since the Sunningdale Agreement of 1974 to end the seemingly unbreakable cycle of violence of the previous 25 years. The talks were arduous and prolonged. They did, however, give us an agreement that has broadly held the peace for the past quarter century. To think that a small place like Northern Ireland could produce leaders of the calibre, courage and tenacity of Monica McWilliams is something we should all reflect on with gratitude. You would expect that after a life of service and participation in the political arena, someone like Monica would have thought about retiring. Since the signing of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, Monica has been the Chief Commissioner on the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission, where she became involved in drafting advice to the British Government on a Bill of Rights. She's been an Oversight Commissioner on Prison Reform in Northern Ireland and was also part of a reporting panel to the Northern Ireland Executive looking at parliamentary disbandment in 2014. Today, Monica serves as a Commissioner on the International Reporting Commission on Parliamentary Disbandment established by Intergovernmental Treaty. Finally, and before we begin, let me express a word of sincere thanks to Anya Lawler of RTE for agreeing to be part of this evening's event. Anya is one of Ireland's best-known culture affairs broadcasters and was, for many, the first voice they heard in the morning as they drove to work through traffic around the country. Today, Anya continues to broadcast on radio news programmes as well as the flagship current affairs programme, The Week in Politics, each Sunday at noon. Now, without further ado, it is my very, very great pleasure to introduce Monica McWilliams in conversation with Anya Lawler.